Another talk on sustain. I looked back, I wanted to go on with those because it is a fundamental question as it is corporatura. And I realized that, yeah, I said many things on the tutorial and the talk on sustain on my Instagram. But it's so huge to talk about because, yeah, I said some things that are true but they are not complete. So I was thinking about talking into something that it happens to me nearly basically every day to find, is that we all talk about sustain, and it is all the time more difficult to find someone with correct or proper sustain, and to find someone with proper sustain that is not just so lucky that he has found it, but he doesn't know how not to lose it if one of the life events and the age and the experiences and other things that can happen in life take it away, and how to have it back. Because yeah, we can have it back. It's a technical path to have it back. The question is that we change our life change, how we think change, and we do change. So changing, and since the sustain is the most tricky question on vocal technique, we have to change the way to find it. And we have to adapt to how we usually are or how specifically we are. So from my point of view and the point of view of the work and of the research that I do and the results that I have with specific singers or people with vocal issues, what I found that is common normally now is that we try to have the sustain when the sustain is not possible immediately. I mean, if you don't have an immediate sustain possible, you can't do the satirics vocalizations. If you don't have a sustain possible immediately, you don't have the medium of the voice, and you don't have the segment in which you have the mixed voice, as it was classically called. It is the medium. It is the straight, simple medium. Sometimes you have just the extremes qualities. You have a low register, and it's all the time more common to find that. And then immediately the head voice. That can be the falsetto for men, and that can be also falsetto with some sustain, but it's not exactly the segment in the middle that we used to experiment and to have with proper sustain, and that we can develop with proper sustain. So what happened and why this? And it is an occurrence that, I don't know, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, didn't happen so often, or I don't have noticed that it did happen so often. In my experience, there is something, and this talk will be about that. The sustain doesn't work by itself. When it does work properly, it seems that it works by itself, but it has minimal conditions or other related characteristics to be found and to be developed. Those two characteristics are the appoggio and the copertura, or eventually what you can call also the words pronunciation. Also what we can call, that is something that I've seen that satirics also does, of course, because it's very useful. And we occurred to call in the same way, the little sound of a door closing, the this is a specific throat movement, inside movement, that very often we use when we have sustain enough to help the closure of the vocal folds and the attack. And it's very, very useful. Without that, it will be quite a problem, and we have to teach that. This is one way. Lama Chu is another way to teach a bit that, but in elasticity and not with this strength. So if you really can't do that, Lama Chu is very useful, and then you can try to do that. Well, sustain. It is related with the appoggio Y and with the pronunciation Y. In the other talk, I told you sustain is something pushing up. Yeah. I'm all the time more convinced that it's not only something pushing up, and I made the example with Alice Roberts, she's a mezzo-soprano, how we were working from proper diaphragm, also in the abdominal chain related, how to, and also with the legs. If you've seen the series with her, you've seen that I was also working with the legs with her and with the hips and with some moving. And then we arrived to what is proper sustain that she was really lacking and she wanted. And the proper sustain is the movement, in my opinion. My opinion means I'm getting convinced by my experience of that hypothesis. All the time I go on more, a little more all the time, perhaps I will change idea, but perhaps no, and perhaps it's a good intuition, is that proper sustain is the work of the fast fibers of the diaphragm. And as Franco Fussi said into a workshop that I followed, the fast fibers are especially in the frontal part of the diaphragm. You have mostly fast fibers than slow fibers in the front of the diaphragm. And the back of the diaphragm has the slow fibers. And this is exactly why we start very often to develop sustain with a certain speed into the gesture to find it. Because to find it, we have to find with a timing. And this time it will involve the fast fibers and not the slow fibers. And when I asked Alice Robert to be precise in that, and precisely at this timing, without looking around for something else, but really looking around for a certain kind of speed, I was pushing the fast fibers to start working. And when they start working and you have an image of, even if it doesn't work very well, but you can look for that gesture, you will be able to choose that, knowing perfectly that it will start without working and then it will develop and it will work. And she has seen in herself that it was really working from quite soon. So, why I'm saying that before because some conditions render impossible for the diaphragm to start working. One of these conditions is that everything that pushes down, if it's too stiff, too heavy, and too strong, it would be in that way, and this being the larynx, okay? I put that for my arms will be easier. This is the sustain. It is normally the weakest part or the not really useful part, because if you're lucky you have on some notes, and is yet a great thing. If you're not lucky, you really don't find it immediately in your voice. This one on the other side is the appoggio, is the one we use to scream, is the one we use to block the larynx, and it is the back and the back insertion of the diaphragm. I found also that the second chakra that you can also, of which we can have a perception in the sacral spinal bones, vertebrae, sorry. If you close that too much and you push on the back, you will never be able to use your sustain. It will block your sustain and it will block your larynx quite low. And the pronunciation and the words and the cigolo. Those will put something in opposition to sustain. And if this opposition is very strong, every time you do something, will be there. And the sustain will be not effective because your note balance is here. So if you want really to start working with sustain without straining your vocal folds and without in here pushing so much pressure that you will force your vocal folds into the note and you will not have the position and the note as Italian bel canto technique wants, you will have to take away a bit of that. In the next tutorial, I will start talking how to take back a little of that. See you